As we move forward, I'm going to call upon our keynote speaker, Mr. Lawrence Mabunda. But before I do that, I think it is essential for me to give a background of Mr. Mabunda. Who's he? Mr. Mabunda was born in KZN at Eshowe. He's the founder and president of ACHIB in 1986. And he's a president of NAFCOC. NAFCOC stands for National African Federated Commerce. He was part of the formation of the National Union of Mine Workers. Essentially, he's a unionist. Founder of ACHIB, and he founded ACHIB to fight for the trading rights of blacks who have faced a barrage of racist and discriminatory laws of apartheid that prevented enterprising. He sits on many boards, including Small Enterprise Finance Agency, which is part of the Industrial Development Corporation. He's also Deputy President of Black Business Council. He remains a key and consistent authority in matters affecting small business. The main aim and objective of NAFCOC is to promote and encourage the development of black business in South Africa and draw black majority into economic activity and decision making, and to promote spirit of cooperation and unity among black business.
Thank you very much, and I would like to thank the institution, the Wits University, as well as the professors for organizing, and the students for organizing this event. It has also helped me to meet some of my colleagues that I did not met for a while, who operate and do leadership, who lead street trade organization. In 1985, I had been working in the mines myself. Livingston Mandana is one of the people we were with in the unions then a long time ago. He's also one of the people involved in this. But I invited him to join this thing, and he has found it interesting since he's still involved. When I find myself being fired from the mines in 1985, February 14, you can see that the system was very cruel, because you can't fire somebody on Valentine's. But they had to obviously fire us because we were demanding on behalf of mine workers a living wage and better conditions. Just to briefly tell you that those years, it was so difficult that people were living in the mines, 20 people in one room, in one little room, and they had to, and there was no inside toilets, all sorts of conditions, and we had to fight in the mines, and therefore we find ourselves out in the street. The amount of money they gave us after we were from prison, because we had been arrested for about 9 months, was 400 rand. 400 rands, and I had to think whether I'm going back home or I'm going to do something. And at the time, there were other colleagues that we had been fired with from the mines. So we decided on buying cosmetics and selling. But we had no place to stay. So you had to sell within a trade until where it ends. You know, where it sleeps, that's where you're going to sleep. And then, because we didn't pay for, the only subsidy we got from the government is that we didn't pay for transport in the train. We would get out of the train before it gets to the station and get onto the other, you know, crossing the... it was quite difficult. But we had to sell and make a living in that way. And a lot of people lost their lives because it was not only difficult, but you had to worry about being arrested every minute. Every minute of your business, you had to be worried about being arrested. In Joburg, at a time, there were only 20 traders that were allowed. 20 traders that were allowed. And they had specific situated stands within Johannesburg. And so those were allowed because they were selling like flowers and so on. But I think somehow the laws have been distorted. Because if you look around South Africa, in every town there's a street called Market Street. Every town in South Africa, you'll find there's a Market Street. And Market Street was basically meant for traders. That was the street where traders were allowed. And that's why there's also Kerk Street. Kerk Street, Market Street, because Kerk Street was for worshippers. You know, people who wanted to pray, they must go to that particular street. But then those who wanted to trade, they had to trade in Market Street. But a lot of, I think the emergence of entrepreneurs. Last night I was attending a memorial lecture by Dr. Richard Maponi. By the way, he started off also as a street trader. These are some of the experiences. So every time when you try to sell, you'll be arrested. So this is how we decided that we must organize ourselves. So I was privileged to be part of the formation of ACHIB. It was the first organization of street traders, not only in Johannesburg, but I would say almost in the whole country. But there had been organizations before, like the coffee cart traders that were previously there and so on. I worked with this university. I was associated, when we started ACHIB, there was a professor who was also associated with this university who sat on our board of ACHIB, Professor Louise Taker. She was a professor in law. And there was also another professor who was in the geography department, Professor Keith Bevan, who worked with ACHIB and was in the executive of ACHIB. So I'm just saying the association between our organization and this institution in particular comes a long way. It's not only starting now, and we are just continuing from where we left. But how did that assist us? It assisted us in a sense that, for an example, if you look at the law that was promulgated in 1991, the Businesses Act, the institution that assisted us to put together the legal argument and everything else that we had to present to the authorities at the time, to PW Board, and then later to FW de Klerk. It was this university that assisted us with it. And Dr. or Professor Unterhalter, yes, David Unterhalter, was, behind those documentations that we put together. So there's a lot of intellectual capacity that we have. And then later on, we realized that the way in which we were able to start the organization was the following. We were arrested and then sent to John Foster, and then there was a licensing officer, a licensing chairman who was a chief magistrate by the name of Radame. And the chief licensing officer who was working with the town clerk at the time was Mrs. Formalta, who was at the Joburg Council. So, because they were annoyed by the fact that every day I'm getting arrested, you understand, in front of the same guy, he said, you know, how can I assist you? Remember, I was maybe around about 20, 21 years old. So he could see that I'm young, and he could see that if he keeps on, you know, doing this, I'm gonna get politicized. Because when you feel victimized all the time, you end up developing a spirit of fighting. So he then said, look, for you, I know, I'm going to organize your license because I don't want to see you here. So it was in April in 1986. So I got this hawker's license. And in reading this hawker's license, it was written, a holder of a hawker's license may, in his name, issue as many permits as he Because the hawker's license was meant for farmers. You know, the farmers, when they harvest milling, they were issued a hawker's license, and in their name, they would issue permits for people who are selling mills in the street. That's why it was written that a holder of a hawker's license may, in his name, issue as many permits as he may. So that is how we started the organization, because therefore all the traders in town, in Joburg, at a time we increased the number from 20 to 250. They were trading under my name. So if you meet a hawker in the street, his license is written, his name, but it says trading on behalf of. Mr. Ngwenya, his father was one of those who traded with my license. So this then grew. So each person that wanted a permit, I would ask him to pay 20 rands. So as we collected the 20 rands permits, we then put it into the coffers to start the organization. And that's how we were able to pay rent, to buy furniture, and to get the organization started. And when the council woke up, we had issued 16,000 licenses. 16,000. They said, whoa, this guy is getting out of hand. Because they could not understand why, you know, I mean, because there were now people in Pretoria trading on behalf of Lawrence Mabuza. Soweto, you know, around the whole of Transvaal. There was a gentleman by the name of Mabuzo, who was the Transvaal administrator. Remember, there used to be Transvaal administrator in Pretoria. He said, you know, you have caused us chaos. I said, why? Because they could no longer arrest people for selling, because they now had a license. Because the only reason. But to get a hawker's license was such a cumbersome situation. You had to apply in 6 departments. The noise department, the nonsense department, the health department, the licensing department, the traffic department. You know, all these departments, they had to make a comment. And for you to get a license, it had to be published in 2 newspapers, English and Afrikaans. At a time, the most prominent newspaper was The Citizen. So it was in The Citizen and any other paper. So that's how we got the organization going. That time, we then organized ourselves. We ended up with a membership of 45,000. And the funding of organizations was by the members. The members were paying membership fees. In ACHIB, at one stage, we used to collect maybe plus or minus 6 million a month membership fees from members throughout the country. Livingston will tell you, we had one guy who went to organize in Matatiele. That guy, because he was carrying so much cash, he decided to buy himself a car. Driving from Matatiele to Joburg, he could not drive yet, so he got an accident in Harrisburg. That was Michael Futter. Yeah. No, so the organizations were funded by the members. The reason why I'm saying this, it is very important that if you belong to an organization, it must be funded by the members so that it is not restricted in who it can criticize at any given time. And that approach has, this is why the hawkers organizations today are mushrooming and there are too many. Because the organizations are no longer funded by the members. If we go back to those basics, the hawkers organization can be united. But for as long as it is not funded by members, members are not paying membership fee, then and also members are not able to demand the service because they are not paying for it. You understand? So if members can pay for the organization and therefore demand the service, you can have a very united organization. And I still wish that I'm going to be doing my last term as president of NAFCOC. I've just been elected a few months ago. I'm doing my last term, and one of my missions is to unite hawkers organizations because it worries me that they are not speaking with one voice, and as a result, they are unable to win the wars that they should win because they disagree among themselves. And I would like to see them united so that they can speak with one voice and have one enemy. And the enemy should be, you know, it should be the people who take their foods. You know? And then secondly, even the government, the government sometimes, they come with assistance, but they destroy what is community initiatives. For an example, one of the initiatives we had at ACHIB was we started what we called container banks. Container banks. We were taking a container, park it in the street, have some cash, we were raising sponsorship. One of the organizations that used to give us a lot of money was Anglo-American Chairman's Fund. So we would give hawkers loans in the morning, 50 rand, in the afternoon they pay back. You know, and it was running very nicely and very profitable because the interest was very high, but calculated on a daily basis. If you borrowed 50 rand in the morning, in the afternoon you pay back 55 rand. And it was running very much. Some of the old hawkers would remember it was based at near Shell House, in that park there. And we were able to give money to the hawkers, as well as the training that was given to the hawkers. You know, how to keep records, how to do all sorts of things. And the infrastructure. But we've had a situation where government is not sure how to deal with this sector. Because sometimes those who are old in organizations will tell you how many times we've been building shelters, and then the government come and destroy them and build another. You know, now you just wonder why are they, you know, wasting money, because they should be building once. But what they do is they build, and then another one, councillor comes, he thinks he's clever, and the other one destroys the whole thing, and that as a result, okay. As a result, we've had the whole growth of small businesses not happening because there is this recycling of information. Going forward, I think we need to, there used to be a very big difficulty with foreign traders, between local traders and foreign traders, which got resolved this way. The street traders are very smart people. What they were doing, they in the meeting, they will come to the meeting and say, no, we don't want foreign street traders. But the foreign street traders will rent the space from the very same people in the meeting, who are in the meeting. So that is how it got harmonized. But the most important thing is, I think the collective buying of small businesses would be the way forward. And also, I think having one organization, because at the moment, the reason why they feel that they are like left behind when the other traders come in is because the other traders buy together and they've got some business, acumen. And the local traders, don't have that kind of bulk buying. So, in conclusion, I want to say this is great work. I hope we can do more. But the most important thing that we must strive for is to try and see how we can assist in uniting the street traders organizations so that they could be having very huge investments today and cooperatives and all of this, if they can all come together and speak with one voice. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence Mabunda. Those were wise words indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, moving forward, I would love to call Professor Nafkodin to give a talk. But before I do that, as protocol requires, I must give a little bit of a background. Professor Nafkodin serves as the chair of the History Workshop. He's a senior lecturer in the History Department, member of the University Senate, serves on the board of the South African History Archives. His most recent book is Alexandra. Also served in the editorial board of the Road to Democracy in South Africa project and published several articles on aspects of the liberation movement. He's currently writing histories of Orlando West and by Triangle. Mr.
Great, thanks very much. I should have stopped you at the second try with my surname. We're doing very well up to that point. We started to get it all wrong. So thank you very much. What I'm going to do is, it's very difficult to follow a speaker like this, and Claire always does this to me. She always gets the best speaker first, and then she has me. Everyone falls asleep because I want me to stop quickly, okay? So next time I'll speak first, and then you get the exciting speaker after this, okay? I want to, very briefly, Claire, just kind of wave at me after 6 minutes. Make some comments on the publication. So the first thing I want to do is to echo some of the points made by Paul Jenkins. I think that in the first instance, a profound congratulations is in order, because what we have in this publication is the collective effort of students. And I think that many people here, and I was certainly surprised, because when Claire invited me, I thought, oh, this kind of master's students who've done research for a year, 2 years, and here's the publication, okay? So what surprised me, and I was profoundly excited when I saw this, in fact, that what we have here is the collective work of third-year students. Right? Now, this is not insignificant, because the research that was undertaken and the analyses that have been produced are very interesting. They are insightful. But they are particularly insightful because the publication here is an outcome of the collaboration between those students and the city traders and the organizations. So the first point I really want to make is that what strikes me as very important about this publication is that you've had, as Paul said, this kind of collective knowledge production. And I hope that the students have learned an important lesson, that knowledge is not only produced in the confines of these walls here, but in fact the best knowledge that is produced is a knowledge between those who kind of think, or they think that they think, okay, and the people beyond the palisade fence of Wits University. It's in that interaction that one gets the most profound knowledge produced. And of course, I think it would be remiss of me not to mention that a lot of this was possible because of the leadership of Claire. So the first point I want to make, right, is this publication and the research undertaken is what one calls relevant research. It is relevant because it speaks to issues that are immediately important. Very often researchers are wary of engaging issues that are happening immediately, because there's a kind of anxiety about not being able to reflect properly and critically on what is happening in the world. So I think this is an important challenge, and therefore the third-year students probably, I think this is where you probably thought that Claire was slightly mad. Most of us think that a lot of the time. But you were profoundly brave to go out to do research on an issue that has been so contentious. Because the research was undertaken in the aftermath of Operation Clean Sweep. It's highly contentious. But you see, I think that it was entirely right for you to do this. Because what was at stake, and what still remains at stake, is the future of Johannesburg. And universities, and particularly students, can't really move from that. We can't say we'll wait a few years for the dust to settle and then we'll go and do research and we'll interview all the wonderful people. But in the meantime, there are real struggles taking place. And what are those struggles? At the one level, it's about the daily existence of people, having money in your pocket to survive. At a very kind of individual level. But at a grander, big scale, it's about the future Pacific. Because the street traders and their struggle, in my view, is one of the most important contestations about what Johannesburg is about. And if Wits University sees itself as being part of the city, then this is exactly the kind of research that must be done. And I think that you set a fantastic example in this respect. The second point I want to make is, in the introduction, I thought that one of the most powerful points that came through in the individual projects and the collection of essays is that many people, and I was struck by the number of street traders that we have in Johannesburg, or in Gauteng. tens of thousands, right? Everyone knows about it. But the way that ordinary or citizens engage with traders, the way that academics write about traders has been very problematic. And the introduction reflects on some of those problematic areas. And I think that the key response of this publication has been to insist that we don't treat traders, the community of traders, as simply individuals. The phrase that is used is that the traders are not simply a collection of atomized individuals. They're not simply individuals on their own, that what has often been missed by people who buy from the traders, who critique traders, is in fact, and the story that we've just heard now, is a story about how the traders have organized themselves. Because when we watch the television news and the traders are protesting, then the kind of image that is given is of this kind of rabble-rousing group of individuals. It's kind of all spontaneous, right? That they got angry and then they marched to the city council. But what we see in this book, right, is the organizations at the heart of these movements. They organize a set of activities, the daily activities, from cleaning the pavements to representing the broader rights of the street traders. And I think that for me is perhaps the most important broad issue that comes out of it. But I just want to, I was also impressed by a set of issues, and it's impossible in a short talk to kind of speak to all of the issues and about the individual projects. But there are probably 4 or 5 things that I just wanted to raise very quickly. And the first 2 won't surprise you because, as you heard from our MC, I'm sometimes a historian, so the histories are very important to me. So the first thing that that came through for me in the different reports, and I know this it was done very briefly, are the histories of the different associations. But perhaps even more importantly, and again we've heard from the previous speaker, is the kind of long-term commitment that a number of individuals have had over many years, sometimes 2-3 decades, in these organizations. You see, there's a perception that street traders kind of, they're there for a few weeks, for a few months, or maybe for a year or 2. But the reality is that street traders are actively involved in this kind of livelihood. This is what they do. 10, 20, 30 years, people are occupying the same place in Johannesburg. This is their life. And these histories come through of the individuals, but also through the organizations. In the introduction, Claire writes about the traders associations in relation to the idea of social movements. And I thought that was very interesting. I'm not persuaded, okay? But the one thing that comes out in most of the stories is how the street traders see themselves as business people. Right? And I wondered whether, because that seems to be very important to the identity of the street traders, whether in fact that identity fits in with the idea of kind of analyzing these movements in terms of social movements. And I know that in fact what is done in the introduction to say that social movement theory falls short, right, of understanding what is happening. It seems to me this idea of traders as business people is perhaps at the center of it. My second last point in relation to this is to reflect on a point that you were making, and that is the proliferation of street trading associations. And there are very important hints in the individual reports of what might be lurked behind it. And I think that future projects should maybe engage it, only because I think we need to get an understanding of this wonderful set of organizations and this important part of the life of Johannesburg. Because what do we get? Right? There are contestations. There are contestations over demarcation of spaces. There are contestations between leaders. One gets a sense that there are political issues, right? None of these things are properly explained, but the hints of these issues, right? But I think that adds to the color, to the richness of this movement, because this isn't a single movement. Yes, they're all called street traders, but it's not a single movement. In fact, what comes out very powerfully is that different traders have different interests. They view the state differently. They view the cops who raid them differently. They view the city differently. They view the state differently. So when we ask the question, as you did very importantly, who is the enemy? I suspect we won't be able to give the same answer. And that's fine. Right? But what it means and what comes through in the report is that because we have different answers to that important question, the associations respond differently. They have employed different strategies and tactics of struggle to engage the city, to engage other street traders and associations. The final point I want to make in relation to this is that I think the maps are wonderful. Because what the maps do, right, is they give a very different perspective of Johannesburg. If you look at Johannesburg through the eyes of street traders, it's a very different Johannesburg from the kinds of maps that we normally see. So I think they've done a wonderful job, and I urge those who have copies, like me, so that's my copy, right, to look at the maps, because I think that they're fantastic. Final 2 points. This was going to be the main part of my talk, because I'm an historian, but I'm going to make 2 points only, because I'm very conscious of the time. So the first point I wanted to make is Operation Clean Sweep is not new. From the very beginning of Johannesburg's life in 1886, as you were saying, there were traders on the streets of Johannesburg. And from that moment, from that founding moment, there has been a profound contestation between those who are in power and who imagine Johannesburg in a particular way, as an orderly, properly planned, clean, and mostly white city. When people have come into the city to make a life in Johannesburg and to create Johannesburg in their interest, they come into contestation with those who are in power. Under apartheid, when black people entered the city and they lived in places, they worked in places, where black people found themselves, the state called those places black spots. And what did it want to do with the black spots? It had one fundamental response, and that was to surgically remove the black spots, to cleanse the white landscape of the blemishes of the presence of black people in the white cities. I want to suggest to you that not much has changed. Right? That when street traders try to make a life for themselves, and they go against what is imagined to be an orderly place, right, then the state intervenes in pretty much the same way. The final point I want to make is about pavements and streets. Very often we ignore these spaces as simply physical spaces. But throughout South African history, pavements have been profoundly contentious spaces. In 1976, for example, pavements and streets were at the center of the struggle between young people in Soweto and the state. The question of who controlled the street was absolutely important in shaping the character of that struggle. The state wants to control the streets and the pavements, right, in order to create it in its own image. So when people enter those spaces to make lives for themselves and to convert those spaces into lively spaces, the state doesn't know what it knows what it wants to do with it. It wants to clean it. It wants to remove the people from it. And I want to urge you and the students who've done the research to make sure that we keep control of the pavement